I came back with a cake in my hands and hope in my chest. By the end of that same night, I was standing in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter, so hard my fingers went numb, listening to my own family calmly discuss how they had already decided my future without me. And that was the exact moment I realized something. I hadn't come home to celebrate. I had come home to be used. And before I left again, I was going to make sure they never forgot what they did to me. Hi everyone, I'm Lee. If you believe that sometimes the people who smile at you the widest can hurt you the deepest, make sure you like this video and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Because this story still gives me chills every time I remember how it all unfolded. I hadn't been home in 6 years. 6 years of building myself from nothing. 6 years of working double shifts, living in tiny apartments with paper-thin walls, eating instant noodles so often I could smell the seasoning in my sleep. 6 years of silence from the people who once called me family. So when my mother suddenly called me one afternoon, her voice warm for the first time in years, I actually froze. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "we miss you. Your father's retirement party is next month. It wouldn't feel right without you." My chest tightened, because those were the exact words I had waited years to hear. It wouldn't feel right without you. For a moment, I let myself believe it. I imagined hugs, apologies, a chance to finally feel like I belonged again. So I took time off work, booked a flight, bought an expensive cake from a bakery near my apartment because my father loved chocolate ganache. And when I landed in my hometown, my heart was beating like it used to when I was a child coming home from school. Hopeful. Stupidly hopeful. The house looked exactly the same. Same white paint. Same creaky porch step. Same faint smell of lemon cleaner and old wood when I walked inside. My mother hugged me. But something felt off. It was quick. Too quick. Like she was hugging an obligation. Not a daughter. "Your room's been cleared," she said casually. "We use it for storage now." That stung. But I told myself it made sense. 6 years is a long time. Then my father walked in. He didn't hug me. He didn't even smile. He just nodded and said, "You look different." Different. Not better. Not successful. Just different. I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. And still I tried. I spent the next few days helping with preparations for his retirement party. Cleaning, cooking, running errands, doing everything they asked. Because deep down I was desperate for one moment. One single moment where they'd say, "We're proud of you." But that moment never came. Instead, something else did. 3 nights before the party, I woke up thirsty around 2 a.m. The house was quiet. I walked toward the kitchen. And then I heard voices coming from the dining room. My mother, my father, and my younger brother. "She has savings," my father was saying. My heart skipped. She lives alone, no husband, no kids. What else is she doing with her money? My stomach dropped. My brother laughed. "Exactly, and she feels guilty anyway, she'll say yes." My hands started trembling. My mother's voice lowered. "We just need to make it sound like it's for the family, for the house." Then came the words that shattered something inside me. "She owes us after embarrassing us by leaving." I couldn't breathe. Leaving. They had kicked me out. They told relatives I was selfish. Ungrateful. A failure. I had spent years blaming myself. And now I realized. They had never changed the story in their minds. To them, I was still the problem. Still the resource. Still the daughter who existed to fix things. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. And then my father said the sentence that turned my shock into something colder. "We'll get her to put the house in her name. Then we'll convince her to take a loan for renovations. After that, she'll be stuck helping us permanently." Silence filled my ears. It felt like the floor disappeared under me. They weren't inviting me home. They were setting a trap. And as I stood there, gripping the wall for support, a slow, burning realization crept into my mind. I hadn't come home to celebrate. I had walked straight into a plan. And for the first time in years, I felt something sharper than sadness. I felt anger. Real, steady, cold anger. Because they thought I was still the same girl who left this house 6 years ago. The girl who cried. The girl who begged for approval. The girl who said yes to everything. They had no idea. That girl was gone. And as I quietly walked back to my room that night, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If they wanted me here to fix everything for them, then fine. I would. Just not the way they expected. And by the time I finished, nothing in this family would ever be the same again. The next morning I smiled at them over breakfast. That was the hardest part. Smiling. Acting like I hadn't heard every word they said. Like my chest didn't still feel hollow from the night before. My mother slid a plate of toast toward me. "You always liked it extra crispy." I nodded, "Yeah, still do." But my hands shook slightly as I picked it up. Because now every small kindness felt staged. Every glance felt calculated. Every word carried weight. And worst of all, I could see the plan forming behind their eyes. My brother walked in, stretching, his tone casual. "Hey sis, you've done well for yourself, right? Big city job, savings and all." There it was. The opening move. I forced a light laugh. "I manage." He leaned against the counter, smirking. "You should help invest in the family house. It's falling apart." I chewed slowly. Carefully. "Is it?" My father spoke without looking at me. "It's old, needs work, but we've done so much for you already, it would be nice if you contributed." The words hit like a slap. "We've done so much for you." My mind flashed back instantly. Being told at 19 to pack my bags because I refused to give up college to work in my father's store. Standing in the rain outside this same house with 2 suitcases. Hearing the door lock behind me. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I nodded quietly. "I'll think about it." Their relief was immediate. Too immediate. I saw my mother's shoulders relax. My brother exchanged a quick look with my father. And that moment confirmed something. They weren't hopping. They were expecting. They already believed they owned my answer. That realization lit a fire in my chest. Not explosive. Not loud. But steady. Controlled. The kind that burns slowly and doesn't go out. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Instead, memories did. Every insult. Every dismissal. Every time they treated me like an inconvenience instead of a daughter. I remembered crying alone in my first apartment, eating dry cereal because I couldn't afford milk. I remembered working 3 jobs while they told relatives I was too proud to come home. I remembered how long it took to stop feeling worthless. And now, they wanted access to the life I built without them. My jaw tightened. No, they didn't want me. They wanted what I could give. That realization hurt more than anything. But it also gave me clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't desperate for their love. I wasn't craving approval. I was calm. And calm is dangerous. Because calm people plan. The next few days the pressure increased. Subtly at first. Then openly. My mother would sigh loudly while looking at repair bills. My father would mention how expensive everything is now. My brother would casually bring up loan options. Each conversation circled back to one thing: my money, my duty. And every time, I nodded, listened, acted thoughtful, because the more they talked, the more they revealed. Like how the house was actually already in debt. How my brother had taken loans in my parents' names. How they needed someone with a clean credit history to bail them out. Me. I wasn't their daughter. I was their solution. And strangely, the more I saw their desperation, the stronger I felt. Because they didn't realize something. I wasn't trapped here. They were. They needed me. And that shifted the power completely. 2 nights before the party, my mother finally said it directly. We were sitting at the dining table. Just the two of us. Her voice softened. You know, family supports each other. I looked up slowly. Yes, they do. She smiled, relieved. Then you understand why we need you to take a loan for renovations, just temporarily. Temporarily. The same word she used years ago when she said kicking me out was temporary discipline. I felt something cold settle inside my chest. I met her eyes calmly. How much? Her face lit up. Only around 200,000. My heart didn't race anymore. It didn't hurt. Because at that moment, I realized something that changed everything. They weren't just asking. They were depending on me saying yes. They had already built their future around it. Which meant, if I pulled that support away, everything would collapse. And suddenly, a plan began forming in my mind. Slow, precise, almost frighteningly clear. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, strategic, and perfectly timed. That night I didn't cry. For the first time in years, I smiled to myself in the dark. Because I finally understood the situation completely. They thought they were trapping me, but they had actually handed me control. And I knew exactly how I was going to use it. I wasn't going to refuse them immediately. No, that would be too easy. Too quick. Too merciful. Instead, I was going to let them believe they had won. I was going to let them build their hopes. Depend on me completely. Trust me. And then, at the perfect moment, I was going to fix everything for them. Just like they wanted. But not in the way they expected. And when the truth finally hit them, it would be too late to undo anything. The moment I decided to play along, everything inside me changed. I stopped reacting emotionally, stopped feeling like a victim. Instead, I started observing, calculating, listening carefully to every word they said. Because when people think they've already won, they stop being careful. And that's exactly what my family did. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen with a calm smile. I've been thinking, I said casually, pouring coffee. 3 heads turned toward me instantly. My father leaned forward slightly, and I met his eyes. I'll help. The silence that followed was thick with excitement. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Oh, sweetheart. My brother actually grinned. I knew you would, you've always been smart. Smart. That word almost made me laugh. But I just nodded. I want to do it properly though, I added. Legal paperwork, financial planning, no rushed decisions. My father waved his hand. Of course, whatever you think is best. That was the moment I knew. They were so relieved, they didn't even question my conditions. And that gave me everything I needed. Control. Over the next week, I played my role perfectly. I researched banks with them, looked at contractor estimates, discussed renovation ideas. I even suggested improvements they hadn't thought of, like updating plumbing, fixing electrical wiring, adding a new roof structure. Every time I spoke, their eyes lit up more, because to them, it sounded like I was investing deeply in their future. What they didn't realize was that I was building something else entirely. Documentation, paper trails, legal leverage. Because while they thought this was about a loan, I was quietly gathering proof of something far bigger. Financial fraud. It started when I insisted we review their existing debts. Just so I know what we're dealing with, I explained. My father hesitated at first, but desperation is stronger than pride. So eventually, he handed over the paperwork. And when I saw it, I almost felt my breath catch. The house wasn't just in debt. It was drowning. Multiple loans, unpaid taxes, overdue penalties, and worst of all, my brother's signature appeared repeatedly. He had taken loans in my parents' names, without telling them the full amounts, even forged documents. My mother didn't know the extent. My father suspected, but chose to ignore it. And my brother, he acted like everything was normal. That realization hit me like cold water. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about them using me. This was about a lifetime of manipulation, lies, and entitlement. And for the first time, I felt something unexpected. Not just anger. Clarity. I wasn't just planning revenge. I was about to expose the truth. That night I sat alone in my room with a notebook. I listed everything carefully. Every loan, every signature, every inconsistency. My hands were steady, my mind sharp, because this wasn't emotional anymore. This was strategic. I contacted a financial advisor quietly the next day, then a lawyer. Both confirmed what I already suspected. If you take a loan under your name, the lawyer said, you will become legally responsible for all existing debts tied to the property. Exactly what they planned. But then he added something else. If you instead file a formal financial audit request, it could trigger an investigation. My pulse quickened. Investigation into what? Possible fraud, misrepresentation, illegal loan activity. Silence filled the room. And in that silence, a slow realization settled over me. I didn't need revenge. The truth itself would destroy everything they built on lies. And that would be far more powerful. Over the next few days, I prepared quietly. I collected copies of documents, recorded conversations, saved text messages where they pressured me. And the entire time, I kept smiling, helping, acting supportive, until the night of the retirement party arrived. The house was full of relatives, laughter, music, people congratulating my father, talking about his successful life, his perfect family. The irony almost made me dizzy, because I knew something they didn't. This was the last night that illusion would exist. Midway through the party, my father raised a glass. He gave a long speech about hard work, family loyalty, sacrifice. Then he looked directly at me. And most importantly, he said proudly, my daughter Lee, who has finally come back to support us. Applause filled the room. Everyone turned toward me, smiling, expecting me to say something. And in that moment, I felt years of pain press against my chest. Every insult, every dismissal, every lonely night, all of it rising like a wave. But instead of breaking me, it made me calm. stronger than I had ever felt. I stood up slowly, took a deep breath, and smiled. Yes, I said softly. I came back to fix everything. The room fell quiet, because something in my tone had changed. Something cold. Something final. And as dozens of eyes watched me, I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick envelope. Because this was the moment, the turning point, the second they would finally understand that I wasn't the same girl they once controlled, and what I was about to do would change this family forever. The room was silent when I placed the envelope on the table. Not the comfortable kind of silence, the heavy kind, the kind that makes people shift in their seats without knowing why. My father frowned slightly. What is that? I looked around slowly at every familiar face. Aunts, uncles, neighbors who had known me since childhood. People who had believed every version of the story my parents told about me. My voice was steady when I spoke. Since tonight is about celebrating honesty, hard work, and family, I thought it was the perfect time to clear something up. My brother's smile flickered. My mother's hand tightened around her glass. I opened the envelope calmly and began laying documents across the table. Loan agreements, debt notices, legal records, one by one, like pieces of a puzzle. At first, no one understood. Then my father picked up one paper, his face drained of color. What is this? I met his eyes. This, I said quietly, is the real financial situation of this house. Murmurs spread across the room. My brother suddenly stood up. Lee, what are you doing? This isn't the time. I cut him off. No, I said firmly. This is exactly the time. Because for years, the truth had been hidden, twisted, buried under pride and lies. But tonight, I wasn't going to let that continue. I took a slow breath, then spoke clearly so everyone could hear. You all think I came back to help my family, to support them financially. Several relatives nodded awkwardly. My father tried to laugh. Of course she did, she's a good daughter. I shook my head. I came back because they asked me to take a loan in my name. Gasps rippled across the room. My mother's voice rose sharply. Lee, stop this nonsense. But I didn't stop. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of their anger. I heard you that night, I said calmly. The words hit like a thunderclap. My father froze. My brother's face turned pale. Heard what? My mother whispered. Your plan, I replied. The entire room went silent. So before agreeing to anything, I continued, I reviewed your finances. I tapped the stack of documents. And what I found shocked even me. I lifted one paper. This house isn't just struggling, it's buried in debt. Another paper. Multiple unpaid loans. Another. Forged signatures. My brother's voice cracked. That's not true. I turned to him slowly. It is, every single one of these loans carries your handwriting. He staggered back slightly. The room erupted in whispers. People exchanging stunned looks. And my father. He looked like the ground had disappeared beneath him. You went through everything, he asked weakly. I nodded. Yes. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was exposure. Truth laid bare in the brightest light. My mother suddenly burst into tears. How could you humiliate us like this? She cried. The words echoed through the room. And something inside me finally broke free. Humiliate. The same word she used years ago when she threw me out. When she told relatives I was a disgrace. I felt my throat tighten. But my voice remained calm. I didn't humiliate you, I said quietly. You did that yourselves. Silence fell again. Heavy, unavoidable. Then I said the words that changed everything. I didn't take a loan for you. My father's head snapped up. What? Instead, I filed for a financial audit. The room exploded into chaos. What do you mean audit? You reported us. My brother's voice shook with panic. Lee, what did you do? I held his gaze steadily. I fixed everything. Those 3 words landed like a hammer. Because now they finally understood. They weren't losing my support. They were losing control. I continued calmly, even as the room buzzed with tension. The audit will determine how these loans were taken, who signed what, and who is legally responsible. My brother sank into his chair. My father stared at the papers with hollow eyes. My mother just cried silently. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. Because this wasn't cruelty. This was justice. They had tried to trap me in debt for the rest of my life. Instead, they were now forced to face the consequences of their own actions. The fallout was swift. Within weeks, investigations began. It turned out my brother had indeed forged multiple signatures, taken loans secretly, and hidden everything until the situation became impossible to manage. My parents were forced to confront reality, publicly, painfully, and for once, they couldn't shift the blame onto me. Relatives who once believed I was the ungrateful daughter now saw the truth. Slowly their attitudes changed. Apologies came. Awkward, late, but real. As for my parents, they tried to contact me many times, but something inside me had finally settled. Not bitterness, not anger, just clarity. Because I understood something now. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect. And without respect, there is no relationship. Months later, I stood outside that house one last time. The same porch, the same creaky step. But it didn't feel heavy anymore. It just felt distant, like a place from another lifetime. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I felt free. Because for years, I thought leaving meant losing everything. But now I knew the truth. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to save yourself. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply refusing to let people use you ever again. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been underestimated, used, or made to feel like you owe people your life, remember this. You don't. Respect is not something you beg for. It's something you protect. So if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this tonight. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is finally choose yourself.